Okay, so I think we are now live. So welcome to another web series titled From Renter to Homeowner. I'm Tiffany Joseph. I'm the owner and broker of Joseph Realty Group. And I host throughout the year different web series on topics relating to real estate to help buyers, sellers, investors just gain some general knowledge about the real estate process. And so tonight, I wanted to talk about the title company because when you are in doing any type of real estate transaction, a title company is involved. So what I've asked is one of my business partners in real estate is Brittany Shingles from Safe Title and Escrow to join us today so that she can help drop some knowledge to everyone about the role of a title company and what they do. So the whole goal is that at the end, if someone is watching this and they are getting into a real estate transaction, that they can at least be knowledgeable about who the title company is and what role and how the title company can help them. So welcome, Brittany.
Nice. Hi. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me on.
Yes. So I truly appreciate you taking the time out, especially in the evenings, because we know we're all busy with little ones at home. So right. I won't take up too much of our time, so we can jump right in it. So the first question that I have is, what is a title company? I think people understand, okay, I work with a real estate agent. They help me find a home. I work with a lender. They help me finance the home. But then when you throw in that title company and tell them, especially with buyers, and you're like, okay, you need to make a deposit to your escrow deposit to this title company. They're like, well, what is a title company? So what is a title company?
Yeah. So what is a title company? I always try to start my presentations out kind of explaining what a title company is. And a very, much oversimplified way of thinking about a title company is really it's an insurance agency. People, they hate to hear it that way, but it really, that's what they are. And even if you're working with a law firm and they're acting in the title capacity, they're actually still acting as an insurance agent. And so that's at the base. That's, like I said, there's a much like oversimplified way of explaining it. But what that is at our base is what we do. We provide two types of insurance products. We provide owner's policies that protect the owner, and we provide lender's policies that protect the lender. But in order to issue those policies, we have to clear the title. And so that's where that kind of legal element comes in, because there are things that are on the ownership of the home, and we need to clear those things up prior to closing. And so that's where that legal element comes in, because we have to make sure that everything is according to the law. And so that's one of the things we do. If someone is just a title company, I'm a full service title and escrow company, so I hold money as well. Not all title companies do that. Some people just kind of act as an insurance agent and they have escrow services outside, or maybe not at all. But yeah, that's what I do. So I hope that's clear.
Yes, in that 1 minute, you shared quite a bit. So I do want us to dissect that a little bit. So you mentioned that a title company provides two types of policies, an owner's policy and a lender's policy. And before they can issue those policies, they must clear title. So can you talk about what does clearing title mean? So let's kind of take a step back, right? So typically when you get involved in a transaction, it is after the buyer and the seller are under contract. So a buyer and a seller have agreed to terms, they have a signed contract, and then that contract is brought to you either from the buyer side or the seller side.
Right.
So once they are under contract and you receive that contract, and who are the legal entity, who's the parties involved, and the property address, that is when you can start your process. Is that correct?
Sorry. Yeah. So yeah, that's exactly how it goes. We don't even start any processes or kind of run any title and lien searches until the parties have made an agreement. And the reason why is because that agreement is the master of the transaction. We pull all of our instructions from the agreements that you made. And so that lets us know how to handle things. So we wouldn't even know how to handle the transaction without it. but let me explain a little more about clearing title and what does it mean. So with an owner's policy, like I said, and I want to make sure people understand that when I say title, I mean ownership. So we're ensuring your ownership, right? When you have an owner's policy, I'm ensuring that you own it. No one else can make a claim for the ownership on your home. Now, for the lender's policy, what we're ensuring is that the lender has what they call lien priority, or is in the first position. So that's what we're trying to do. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do.
And you just bear with us tonight, as everyone, we have families. It's no problem.
So
and of
sorry.
course, our little ones, they got to come at that time, right?
How long have I been sitting here? And he's not said anything. And he waited until I get, and I said, Mom, but I need you. I'm like, you don't need me right now. Yeah. Okay. But okay. Let me, okay. So resetting. So yeah, so when we're ensuring that the lender has first priority. And why is that important for the lender to have first priority? So if there is a subsequent foreclosure action in the future, right, they need to foreclose on the home and they're going to liquidate the value of that home so everyone can get paid. When that happens, whoever is recorded, has items that are recorded, they're going to get paid first. And whoever gets paid off first, and then anybody who doesn't get paid, if there's no more money left after the foreclosure, there's nothing for them. And the lender, they're giving you a whole bunch of money. They want to make sure that, their interest in your home is protected. And so that's what we're ensuring, is that they have lien priority. We've cleared every issue up, and there's no liens that are like prior to them, or first in line before them. And so that's what we're trying to do. And that's what the insurance goes to say, is that, hey, you're first in line, you own this home outright. And if something should happen in the future and you don't own this home outright, we'll reimburse you for the cost of your home.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So the policy is saying you owner, no one else can make a claim to this property. We have done our title search. And right. If there was any other interest in the property, all of that is cleared prior to closing.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So by the time closing happens, the buyer will know, okay, there is no one else who has any interest. And that is issued through a title insurance policy.
Right. And that comes after closing. What you're going to get during the process of purchasing a home is what they call a title commitment. And it'll tell you what kind of policies are going to be issued on the first page. And then the second page should tell you what needs to be cleared, like what's actually on the title. And then the third page lets you know what's not going to be touched by the title insurance policy. So that, it's something that exists, but it's not going to be covered by your insurance. It would, so it's important to look at that page as well. It's called B2. So, but yeah, that's what that does. And then after closing, you'll get your original. Mm-hmm.
So what would be some examples of things that are covered in the event that someone ran into an issue?
Right. So things that are covered are like missed mortgages, missed foreclosure actions, anything that's easily discovered where someone could have a superior interest. And so that's opposed to like things that aren't covered, which are things like easements. That's the main thing you're going to see on B2 that's not covered is, that means someone has like the right of use or the right of access to your land. So you usually see that in the form of like utility easements. A lot of times FP&L will be running, a line underground under your property, and they've got the right to go in and dig up your line if they need to access it. If there's something wrong, they have literally like a recorded document that's recorded in the public record saying, hey, we have the right to go and go into this property and fix this line. And that way, and you can't tell them they can't, because they have that recorded easement there. And that's one of the things that's not covered. That's an example of something that's not covered.
Not covered.
Yeah.
Or an easement can also be that neighbor's property line is running through. Is that correct?
No. So your neighbor's property line is no. I mean, okay. So like I said, the term easement means right of use or right of access, right? That means someone else has the right of use or right of access to your land. So your neighbor's property line. Now that isn't to say that someone cannot create an easement. I'm sure if if you remember that whole thing when you're going to the real estate program, that
Yes,
they have all
that's
that
what
stuff,
I'm, yeah,
and they
yeah,
tell you,
exactly.
that someone can create an easement. But the easements that you'll see coming up with in title insurance are more formal easements, because a lot of people talk about like easement by prescription, things like that. But they're more formal easements that are literally like actual recorded documents that are recorded in the public record, that have, just like you see a deed and it has deed at the top, it has
Yeah.
easement at the top, and
Yeah.
it's recorded like that. But yeah, I mean, those easements are very difficult, because you learn them when you learn them in like real estate school or even in law school. You learn them in a fashion that is more common law, like what it sounds like, but in reality,
Yeah.
it doesn't really happen like
Happen
that. You
that-
can't really just, you
The
can't just like
book
go
way.
like, this is
Yeah.
my land, no,
Yes.
it doesn't, not in real life.
So at closing, you get a title commitment, and then after someone closed, what are they issued?
Yeah, they're going to be issued your final policy. One is going to go to you if you're using a lender. One is going to go to the lender. It's also going to come with the original recorded documents. So if it's the mortgage, the original mortgage, after it's recorded in the public record at the county recorder's office of whatever county the property is located in, it's going to be sent off to the lender along with the final policy. For the owner, they're going to get a copy of the actual deed, the one that's signed by the seller, and it'll be theirs for safekeeping.
So where do I think, people, when they're first purchasing the house, they have all these papers, they're feeling overwhelmed. And again, sometimes people don't sell these homes until 15 years later, maybe 30 years. So what do you recommend people do with these documents? Because when it does come time to, if you ever needed to put a claim against your title insurance policy, or when you sell, there's also the ability to show that you had title insurance. So what do you kind of recommend with the documents, or is there a way that they can retrieve it years down the line if they needed to get access to those documents?
Right. Yeah, I would really recommend holding on to it, scanning it, putting it in your records, keeping it safe, maybe an electronic copy, but also keeping these wherever you keep any of the rest of your precious documents. Because as you said, and it should be a common practice, and our title underwriters, they really stress this to us often, to say, hey, have your sellers bring in their title policy. Like, they ask us to but I can tell you right now, like, as I was telling somebody the other day, I'm like, I'm at over 100 files, and I probably have had two sellers bring in title insurance policy. I don't know why. People take it and they just chuck it, and it's just like, it's gone. I have no idea where it is. I don't know anything about title insurance. Hold on to it, because you might be able to give your buyer, when you sell it in the future, a reissue credit. They may be able to get a discount. And I always try to tell people about that. It may, there are certain circumstances where it's available. So my thing is, try to get it, try to get it. So yeah, try to get it if you can.
Okay. So in general, so even if someone has it, let's say a few years, let's say 15, 20 years later, and they do have their title insurance policy and they're ready to sell the house, that policy could still give a buyer credit?
Not usually within that state, not that state, but not usually in that longer term. With usually even like 3 to 5 years, the underwriter will still allow that. But 20 years, it's been so much title history that has happened, may not be willing to issue it if that's the case.
Okay, so 3 to 5 years, if you're trying to sell within 3 to 5 years, then that will be able to help.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, but you do want to ask, you always want to try, but the other reason why they asked us to request it from the sellers is because of the fact that it allows the the underwriter, once they have it, they're able to kind of take the search from where the last person left off, and they don't have to do a brand new search. And so that's why our
Oh,
underwriters are like, get that policy, but it's just hard. It's hard to
oh,
get.
but that is good to know. I didn't realize. So it
Yeah,
really helps on the back end.
it
Okay.
really helps the searches. Yeah, the searches, they come back, quicker, when they're able to do it that way. So, but like I said, it does not have, like, no one does. I don't know why no one does it though.
Okay. So talk a little, so we know that part of the owner's policy and the lender's policy is issued out. That's kind of the final thing. And you have to clear title. What are you, when you're, you talked about if there's any liens on the let me just rephrase this. What are you actually looking for when you use the term to clear title? What things are you searching for to make sure that they don't exist on the property?
Right. So we're doing and let me say this: the underwriter, the title underwriter, the insurance agent, the big insurance company, like the State Farm of these companies, they're the ones who do the searches, and they have title examiners who sit down. That's all they do. That's all their job is, to search title. So what they're looking for are things that are recorded in the public records at the county recorder's office that attach to the title or the ownership. They attach to the land itself. Regardless of the owner, they attach to the land. But they also do a search of the name. So when we're inputting a title search, we're also going to search the names of the buyer and the seller. Right. Because we're also doing a search of the names. And the reason why we're doing a search of the names is because we want to make sure that, say, Citibank or whoever it is, City Cards or Amex, anybody sues you because you defaulted on their loan, right? You defaulted on whatever it is, and they sued you. Once they sued you and they've won a judgment, they can record that judgment in the public record, and then it will attach to all of the property that you own. So even if you own a property and like it comes after the fact, it may not be, it won't pull up as, it won't pull up like if you search the address, right? It's going to pull up for that particular person, but it attaches to their property, all of the property that they own in that county. It's called a certified judgment. And so that's something else that we're looking for. We're looking to say, hey, is this you? Do you owe Citibank $10,000? We don't want to have that change hands and you still owe Citibank that $10,000. The reason why that's important is because, again, when we go to that foreclosure and we don't pay Citibank off and they recorded theirs in 2009 and then your mortgage is recorded in 2015, who gets paid off first? Citibank, because they recorded before you. And so that's what the title company, that's what we're insuring. You're not, we're insuring to the lender, hey, no, if we have to sell this place, you're going to get paid first.
Okay. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So you mentioned that you're searching by the seller. I'm just going to focus on the seller for a minute, by the seller's name. So let's say the seller owns multiple properties in Broward County and there is a open lien on property A, but they're selling property B. Does property A's lien have anything to do with property B being sold?
Absolutely. Once it becomes recorded, it's called a cross-attached lien, and it goes to every property they own in the county.
So how does that impact the seller closing on property B?
He's either going to have to get a special release that's going to have to be recorded on that, or he's going to have to pay it off. And so that's what, yeah. So I know. And I get things like that happen all the time, and it'll come back and they say, that's not even this property that, because they own a land lot in Miami, and it's gotten with a code enforcement lien because somebody was dumping, right? That's typical. That's like basic what you see. But then they go to sell their main home and they're like, well, why do I have to pay for this land lot that I over here? Why do I have to pay for that to sell my home? You do. And the buyers, it's the same thing. We do the name stuff on the buyers as well. If you owe Citibank $10,000 and you're going to buy a home, we're not going to let that, you know what I mean? You're not going to be able to just, unless it's not you, right? Because we do searches of the names, and you're not the only person with that name. So like there's a lot of people that are going to come up. But yeah, for the buyers as well, if you owe those people money, it's gonna come up in the title search. You're either gonna have to prove that that's not you by signing an affidavit saying that's
So
not you.
really with the buyers, you're kind of also looking based on their social.
No, not on their socials, only on their names. We do name searches.
So then how are you attaching, because, Mary Jane is a common name. Are you attaching searches related to Mary Jane who lived at 123 Main Street?
Every Mary Jane in the Miami-Dade County. So, I mean, in that county, I keep saying Miami-Dade County.
Yeah.
So this, what happened 2 weeks ago is, I had a young lady, she was selling her home. Her and her husband had split. And the husband, while he was on title, his name was, I won't say his name, but his last name was Williams. It was an extremely common name.
Yeah.
So literally, I think there was like 12 judgments that came up to this person's Williams. And so the thing was, they were divorced. She got the house. And so she was like, why would my ex-husband come up for this right here? Because he was on title at one point. And while he was on title, these judgments were recorded with that name. So I had to find the ex-husband and say, hey, are these yours? Is this you? And he said, no, that's not me. And that was it. Yeah.
So you had to have him sign a paper, an affidavit. So that gets very tricky, because in a case like that, if they weren't talking or he wanted to be nasty, he could say, I don't want to sign.
He could have held up her whole transaction, but he was very nice. They weren't talking. He's remarried. It was very nasty. I had to get in the middle, but it worked out. It worked out. He was still nice,
That's nice. Okay. So, I love having these, because I even gain knowledge about like the back end of all of these things.
Yeah, a ridiculous process that's going on. Yeah.
We don't always see that. Okay. So buyers and sellers need to make sure that, because that can hold up. So in a situation, if it's a buyer that does have some type of judgment against them, that can also hold them back from being able to close, because they're going to need to pay that. And if they're already tight, or if the lender didn't even know about that,
right? If
it wasn't on their credit or something and the lender didn't know, that can also be an impact to getting to the closing table.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, because sometimes it's not always credit card companies, something that affects your credit. Sometimes you did something negligent and you've been sued.
Yes.
And it's there. And that's where it'll come up, because that your person, I had, when I was at a previous title company, I had this guy and he was going to buy a place, but it was a personal injury action. And I think he owed the person like $6,000, but he just never paid them. But he wasn't able to prevent it. Like I said, that wasn't something that would show up on his credit, because he was sued. Somebody sued him, but he lost and he owed that person money. And so we weren't able to let that thing go, because it's like, hey, if you got money to buy a house, you get money to pay them off. And their judgment was recorded prior to this mortgage that's going to be recorded. So who has priority?
They do. So let's talk a little bit about that, because if buyers, right, that's not something they would typically even think about doing. So if someone is looking to buy and they know they may have something out there, would you recommend they just search on their county's public records to see what's listed under their name?
Yeah. I mean, if they know it's them, to me, if you know it's you, handle it before. Yeah. That's one of the things, and not only get your credit in line, but also kind of just, get that stuff together.
Yeah. Handle it stuff in order.
Right.
Get your
even refinances.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's very interesting, because I don't think people would think about those things.
I know.
So let's go back a little bit to talk about in the real estate transaction, if there's a buyer and a seller under contract, in South Florida, particularly in Broward and Miami-Dade, there is on the contract, it lists who is actually going to pick the title company and who pays for the title search, who pays for the owner's policy. And it can vary. I think within the state of Florida, the party that typically pays for certain things when it comes to title varies. But in Broward and Miami-Dade, can you talk about what is kind of the standard within these two counties?
Right. So within Miami-Dade County, it's usually the buyer picks, buyer pays. And the rest of the state of Florida, mostly it's not like that. In Tallahassee, it doesn't seem to be that way either. All the contracts I've gotten in Tallahassee haven't been that way. It's been buyer picks, buyer pays up there as well. But if you go to Palm Beach, it's seller picks, seller pays. But yeah, so down here we do buyer picks, buyer pays for the title company and the title insurance. And the seller pays for the title and lien searches. So that's the big difference between that 9C1, 9C2, and 9C3. 9C1 is seller picks, seller pays. 9C2 is buyer picks, buyer pays. And 9C3 is buyer picks, buyer pays, but seller pays for title and lien. So that's the biggest difference. And it saves the buyer a little bit of money.
And it actually makes sense because the seller needs to know what's currently on their property. The lien search and the title search is indicating what exists today on that property or from the time the seller owned it. Right.
And just to be clear about the lien searches and how they differ from title searches is the lien searches are unrecorded liens. So if you have title, like I said, they're going to go to the county recorder's office, right? Like every county has a recorder's office. And that's what they do. They just keep records. It's just like it sounds. And they keep records of everything. You can go there and you just say, here, stamp this. And okay, we'll hold on to it. That's the official records. But if there is a code enforcement issue or code enforcement citation, that's not going to be at the county recorder's office, right? It hasn't risen to that level yet. It can rise to the level of becoming a recorded lien, but it's more than likely sitting in that code enforcement officer's notebook. So we need to go to them and say, hey, do you have anything on this particular property? Is there anything pending or going on right now that may become a lien in the future? And that's what we're looking for. We go to the tax collector's office, what else? Any kind of building, zoning, not zoning, building. We go to those different offices and we say, hey, is there anything that you have that would affect this property in the future that's, possibly not right now, but in the future? Yeah.
So another question that I wanted to bring up, another thing we're seeing in this market, that's very competitive is that some of the sellers, so we know in Miami and Broward, typically buyer picks, buyer pays.
Right.
Well, the sellers are wanting to pick, but they still want the buyers to pay. So where they want the seller to be able to pick and use their title company. So if buyers run into deals that happens, what kind of recommendation would you have for them to make sure that they're being protected because they're not actually able to pick the title company that they would like to use in their transaction?
Right. I think, anytime I hear that, I always tell the sellers, well, let them pick it. I think the way that you can protect yourself on either way is you always want to make sure that you want to go, because title companies, if they're just title companies, they're going to be regulated by what they call DFS or Department of Financial Services.
Okay.
And I would look the company up just to make sure it's a licensed company, everything, check the Google reviews, make sure the company is on the up and up. Make sure they have good reviews. You're not seeing things like, that there's any issues with this particular company. Just Google them and get as much information. But, most of the time, everything is going to go fine. But I would certainly recommend letting the buyer do that. Let the buyer, pay. Let the buyer pay for it. Let the seller pay for it. But what the contract states when people pick that, if it's not seller picks, buyer pays, what generally happens, what the contract says is that the seller is going to pay for the owner's policy and that the buyer is going to pay for the lender's policy. So that's what happens in like Palm Beach. So it's like, and when there's something called a simultaneous issue, right? Because when a property is being purchased and you're buying owner's policy and a lender's policy at the same time, you're not double billed for those policies, right? Because title insurance is based off of the cost of the home, but it's set by the state. But when they're issued together, you're not like $1,500 for this one, $1,500 for this one. It's like $1,500 for this one, and then like $100 for this. You know what I mean? Like you get a discount on that second policy
by getting them together.
by getting them together at the same time when you're purchasing a home. That's why I tell people, like, you might as well get it. And you'll see that on the contract when you look down at section H, when you're looking at a CD, and it'll say owner's title policy, and it'll say optional. People are like, what is that? Why do I get it if it's optional? Because number one, you're going to get this excellent protection. And number two, you're going to get a discount if you get it at the same time. So it just makes sense to get it right then at closing. But yeah, so so that's what you're going to see. The seller is still going to pay for the owner's policy. And so that usually is the discounted policy. And but it gives you, it's better than anything. It's better than nothing. So I say get it. Yeah. I say, let them do it. I always recommend let the seller pay for it.
Yeah. So I think one of the good points that you brought up is even if seller picks, seller pays, or if seller picks, buyer pays, the point being is that the buyer can still go and research the title company and make sure that it is a legitimate company. And I bring that up just because we know sometimes here in South Florida, we run into different scams. So I want to make sure that that's a good point for people to be protected.
I have heard some horror stories. One of my other brokers, she called me the other day, and she was just freaking out because one of her agents had a file, and the title company, they did the closing statement one way, but they dispersed in a completely other way, and they took a part of their commission. So I understand. I've heard some horror stories, and I do get it. I get it. So you want to be able to be kind of in control and make sure they're not using anybody janky. So I get that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Brittany, I do want to thank you so much for, I know we kept this brief, which is good because people don't have a whole hour to even listen to a replay. So I think 30 minutes is good. And we shared a lot of knowledge. So before we go, if people want to reach out to you for, to use as a title agent, how can they contact you?
Yeah. Any of this information, any of that information there is good. You could always reach out to me at Safe Title Co. on Instagram. My number is up there. If you have any questions, even if you're not using my company and you just have questions, I absolutely am 100% fine with that. If I don't know, which I don't know a lot, so I can outsource it and get it to you. So yeah, but thank you so much, Tiffany. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I love.
No, thank you. Yeah, no, and it's always a topic that gets missed in the process. So I definitely learned some information to pass on to clients. And I will say I always appreciate it, even if there's transactions where I haven't used you because my buyer has to use, or I'm on the seller side, you're always willing to help out. So I
know, I appreciate it.
So you enjoy your evening, and thank you for those tuned in and those watching the replay.
All right. Have a good one.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.